Hello, I'm Pablo Moraga-Navas, and I'm gonna talk about natural language for communication. This chapter focuses on why the agents may want to exchange information-loaded messages and how can they do it. It is based on how a communicative agent works and describes a fragment of a natural language such as Spanish or English. The agents send signals to other agents to reach some purpose, and they do it by means of an speech act. By creating a speech act, it is intended to achieve that the other agent performs an action. This is for the second agent to understand the act of speech created by the first agent. Language fundamentals. There are two types of languages, natural and formal one. The formal one is made from symbols and strings, unlike the natural one, which is not strictly defined nor established and is used by speaker communities. Both languages have semantics, but only the formal one has an established grammar. In this chapter, we'll use the natural languages as if they were formal ones. In a typical communication episode involving a speaker or a listener about some statement, there are 7 different stages. Intention, generation, synthesis, perception, analysis, disambiguation, and incorporation. To define a formal grammar of a small sample of a natural language we are going to call EO, we must do. First off, define a lexicon to that formal language that is going to be a set of the allowed words in that grammar. Second, we have to define a proper grammar to combine the lexicon words into phrases. Syntactic analysis. The syntactic analysis is defined as the process of finding a syntactic tree for an input string. There are two types of syntactic trees. Ascendant and descendant. The syntactic trees can be defined as problems with its own initial state, successor function, and finalization criteria. But both the ascendant and descendant algorithms are inefficient. To solve this, we used dynamic programming, which is based in the principle of storing a substring the first time it is analyzed, so it won't have to be analyzed again. This technique is used by the algorithms called syntactic analyzers graphs. When we defined EO, we saw it could create some incorrect phrases that are not permitted by the concept of concordance between the subject and the verb that exists in so many natural languages. To solve this, we need to increase the already specified grammar roles instead of introducing new ones. To do that, we use the definite clause grammar or DCGs. The DCGs permit us to talk about the syntactic analysis as logic inference, allowing us to reason about languages and strings in many ways. It's also important to notice that we have to create a subject-verb agreement list that enunciates the complements that the verbs can use in order to differentiate the verbs that have no object and the ones that does, by declaring the phrases that can follow a verb.
To understand the semantic interpretation, it is necessary to define the following concepts. Semantics is the extraction of the meaning of statements. Systemic grammar is an approach that emphasizes the most important parts of the semantic form. The pragmatic interpretation is the resolution of the meaning of the reference, which are phrases that refer directly to the current situation. Finally, we define semantic interpretation as the process of associating an expression in first-order logic with a phrase. There is an intermediate form between syntax and semantics. The intermediate form has two key properties. First, it is structurally similar to the syntax of a phrase and can therefore be easily constructed by compositional meanings. Second, it contains the necessary information for it to be translated into a logical phrase of the first order. Because it is between syntactic and logical forms, it is called quasi-logical form. Ambiguity is a very important problem in the understanding of natural language. Most sentences have several possible interpretations, but usually only one is appropriate. There are several types of ambiguities. Lexical ambiguity, in which a word has more than one meaning. Syntactic ambiguity, also known as structural ambiguity, can also be represented with or without lexical ambiguity. Semantic ambiguity can appear even in phrase without lexical or syntactic ambiguity. There is also a series of technicalities in communication that can lead to ambiguity, which is the metonymy, which is a figure of speech in which you can find an object to replace another object, and the metaphor, which is a figure of the speech in which a phrase with a literal meaning is used to suggest a different meaning by analogy. the disambiguation underlying the knowledge of the world, the real situation, and the use of language, and can be done by combining the evidence using all the techniques for the representation of knowledge and reasoning not occur. Most languages exist in a context of multiple sentences, not a single one. A discourse is a string of language, usually one that has more than one sentence in length. We will focus on two particular subproblems. The first one is the resolution by reference. The resolution by reference is the interpretation of a definitive pronoun or phrase that refers to an object in the word. The resolution is based on the knowledge of the word in the previous part of the speech. The second subproblem is about defining the structure of a coherent discourse. A discourse is composed of segments, where each segment is either a sentence or a group of sentences, and where the segments are joined by coherent relationships. Coherent relations serve to unite a discourse. This guides the speaker in deciding what to say and what to leave implicit, and this guides the listener in the recovery of the intention of the speaker. Grammatical induction is the task of learning a grammar from data. Obviously, it is a task to try, since it is proven that it is quite difficult to build a grammar by hand and that billions of example statements are freely available on the internet. It's a difficult task because the space of possible grammars is infinite, and because verifying that a given grammar generates a set of sentences is computationally expensive. In summary, the understanding of natural language is one of the most important subfields of artificial intelligence. It is outlined on ideas of linguistic philosophy as well as on techniques of representation and reasoning of logical and probabilistic knowledge. Unlike other areas of artificial intelligence, the understanding of natural language needs an empirical investigation of current human behavior, which becomes increasingly complex and interesting.